meditation. So find a comfortable position and just, let your mind turn inwards. Letting the body become calm and peaceful. And then letting the mind encouraging or inviting the mind to also become calm and peaceful. Today, I want us to reflect on learning. And maybe invite some memory of something you've learned this week. Could be something practical. Things to learn about ourselves. How our mind works, how our conditioning affects our actions, our attitudes, our perceptions. So just bring the question up in the mind, what have I learned recently about my character? My qualities. And if we've learned something that we want to change, this is a good thing. This is how we make progress. This is how we develop. Or if we've learned something about ourselves that we see as wholesome and beneficial according to Dhamma, and this is also a good thing. And we can practice happily, knowing that that's there. Consider what your experience is when learning is blocked. What gets in the way? What causes us to be closed to seeing another point of view? And what causes the mind to be open and ready to learn? And then right now we can even notice what feelings arise when we hear these words. And we're already learning all the time when we're mindful and present. And even in meditation, it's a process of learning. What helps the body to be calm, to become serene. What brings up joy and happiness. Causes the mind to become still. What is it that brings up joy in the body and mind? Feelings of piti and sukha, confidence, pleasant, encouraging mental states, wholesome, beautiful. Sometimes the whole body starts tingling, feeling a very pleasant kind of warmth. And mindfulness becomes bright and clear. And the mind becomes peaceful and happy. And the hindrances fall away. And we're left with the open readiness for insight to arise. Is this your first time? What's your name? Karishma? Adishwa? Karishma? Karishma. Karishma. Welcome. So today, I want to talk about learning, being a ready learner. It's one of the things that brings so much joy is to see people in the community developing. Really picking up moral virtue and perfecting it and becoming happier in their lives and developing in their meditation practice. It is so beautiful to watch, and this community is full of really earnest practitioners who want to learn. And this is so essential if we want to wake up, to learn, to change. And it's really what the Buddha encouraged so much in his teachings. When he gives that sequence of things in the with Chanki Sutta and the mid-length discourses, and he talks about how if we really want to discover truth, if we really want to come to the final arrival at truth, then we want to find a teacher, someone who we really observe carefully over a period of time to see if there's any evidence, any sense of this person operating or acting from greed or hatred or delusion in a way that would lead people the wrong way. First of all, just really having a clear sense that the person you're listening to is coming from the right place. And also in that description, the Buddha says, and you see that this person teaches the Dhamma that is difficult to understand. It's subtle. It's not something you can teach from a place of greed or hatred or delusion. And so that's the first step. And he says that when you find someone like that, that you feel you can really trust, that they're going to um, teach in accordance with the Dhamma. And he doesn't say that the person has to be an arahant. I think that's pretty interesting. You know, he's not saying, oh, look for somebody who's got attainments. I think partly probably because it's so difficult to know. And people can claim they have things, and that's usually a really major red flag that they probably don't, because that kind of attainment doesn't have the ego in it, doesn't have a, you know, pushing forward a sense of self. So then when you find, the Buddha said, when the person finds someone that they feel like they can trust in that way, then they go to visit them. Of course, nowadays we visit online a lot. And we might listen to the recordings of these great teachers and so on. But we listen in a certain way, you know, with really an open mind, really taking it in. And I know my experience with one of my teachers in particular, it wasn't always easy because sometimes his disapproval of me as a how do I want to describe myself there? Not very switched on. I don't know. Pretty naive, pretty not yet understanding the Dhamma and acting in my patterns of behavior that we're conditioned with, you know, in the world. But having, you know, what's important is to have that openness to hear it, to want to see our own weaknesses, to want to see what we can change, what we need to change. So when we come to that, we come to hear the Dhamma, we really want to take it in. And when we feel we're being criticized or maybe even put down, or things aren't the way we want them to be, that's a great opportunity to really look like, what is it that I can learn from this? And so the Buddha said, you listen with open ears, you really take in the Dhamma, and then you memorize what you've heard. You really remember it. And maybe you don't memorize it like we would memorize a chant, but you hear it and you bring it up in your mind again and again. Maybe the part that's right at the edge of what you understand. And we bring it up in the mind again and again, and we really investigate it, really scrutinize it, really think, how is this true? How does this work? How does this fit with the rest of the Dhamma? How does this show up in my life? And so when we're really investigating the Dhamma like this, and we start to see that it's true, there's a lot of enthusiasm for the Dhamma that arises in the heart. And when that enthusiasm arises, that gives us the energy to practice and to really dig in. And it doesn't mean we have to be, you know, sitting 5 hours in a row, although if that happens, great. But it's more about the strong desire to fully understand and let the Dhamma permeate our body and mind completely. And then as we go on more, energy comes up to practice even further. I actually printed out the list here because it's kind of long the way the Buddha puts it. In the actual sutta, it says that after you've observed the teacher and you feel they're not going to lead anyone in the wrong way and they teach the subtle Dhamma, it says then you place faith in that person. It's the part I didn't exactly say. When you place faith in that person, filled with faith, you visit and pay respects to that person. So that part, that paying respects part, is actually a way that the heart opens. It's a kind of giving of permission for that teacher to tell us, and it's an openness to receive the Dhamma. And then you really listen. And you hear the Dhamma, you memorize it, you examine the meaning of those teachings, and you gain a reflective acceptance of them. Reflective acceptance means that you've thought it through and it all sounds correct, but you're not really completely understanding it yet. But this zeal springs up, this enthusiasm, and then you apply your will. You apply, I don't know, there's some kind of way that we can get off track in this process. If we put in too much of our own will, then the ego is behind it too much. But I think the will here is that we make the decisions to practice, to really continue to let this Dhamma soak into us and examine it. Because the next step is to scrutinize. And then the commentary says in that point, at that point, that the way we like really investigate is to apply those three characteristics of impermanence, dukkha, and not self. So it's like that ongoing reflection of how whatever we're doing, whatever we're engaged in, whatever we're seeing in front of us, and applying these three characteristics. And strive. Another place where we can go over the top. And I think with each one of these, like striving, what does it mean? It means we're consistent. It means we're putting in the energy. We're finding the beauty of the Dhamma, more inspiration in it. We're finding beauty in the community, the camaraderie of working all this through together. With resolute striving, one realizes with the body the supreme truth, seeing it by penetrating it with wisdom. So it's like there's all that effort that gets made in the right way, and that investigation, and then eventually the insight comes. It's like it really takes hold. It really completely is completely embodied. And then we generally, I don't know if generally is the right way to put it. It's like what arises then is a different view of things. We see things so much more fully and probably different from the way we've looked at things before. To the point where it really changes how we interact with people and how we relate, how we understand what people are up to, and how we understand the world. But more than anything, how we understand ourselves. So how does this work? Being open and ready to learn means we're willing to hear, like I said before, feedback. And it's not just feedback from that teacher we put faith in, but feedback from anyone. We want to be able to hear it, try to understand where they're coming from, investigate, is this actually true or not? Is this in accordance with Dhamma or not? And really develop the humility to hear and to observe our own patterns, observe our actions and ourselves. And then the other side of it is when we feel like we want to give other people feedback, or we want to give people advice, to really look at where it's coming from. First of all, do I have the permission? Do I have their invitation to do that? And if not, is what's behind it? Is it the ego? Our sense of self is the most important thing to understand, to look at, to see if that's what's motivating us, or is it really just Dhamma? A lot of times when we want to give other people advice or we criticize, we're putting ourselves above them. Like we think we know better than they do. And what's really behind that is the sense of self. If we see something happening with someone else and we see that their choices they're making are leading to their harm or someone else's harm, and we're seeing that not through our ego and sense of self of pushing ourselves up higher. I'll talk about putting ourselves down lower in a second, because that also can happen. But if it's really coming from loving kindness, compassion, equanimity, first of all, there's no intensity around it. It's really, and there's no pushing it on them. This is something very important to learn how to discern in ourselves. Why am I saying this? Whatever we're wanting to say to people. Why am I saying this? Where is it coming from in me? When we see someone doing something that we think is, maybe we feel irritated by it or negative about it, we should also remember the times we've done something similar ourselves. Really bring that sense of self down. We want to try to take away the power, the energy, the identification with that sense of self. If we really want to be a learner, and by the way, the Buddha calls everyone who hasn't reached arahantship yet a learner. Even if they're a non-returner, they're still considered a learner, because we haven't gotten it completely. We're not completely free from suffering. So if we're experiencing dukkha, that's the indication there's some more to learn here. And actually, when we see that, it is so wonderful. And when we see that, either we're, putting ourselves above others, or we're putting ourselves below others, or even the same as. I know you've heard this before, but really try to identify when it's happening in our experience. This is so important to know that what's behind that is the sense of self. We're taking the sense of self as the basis of life when we're doing that. And what we want to do is take the Dhamma as the basis of life. And to not be so critical of others. If we're really identifying the wholesome and the unwholesome, which is what we should be doing all the time, to see what's wholesome, what's going to lead to peace and happiness, what's going to lead to tension, to stress, to suffering. If we're really doing that discernment without the sense of self pushing it, without somehow kind of showing that we're better than someone else or we're worse than someone else or whatever, then there's a peacefulness about it. There's a calm, there's a equanimity about it. If we're without that sense of self, there's a really a beautiful calm feeling, even when it's something unwholesome. And so to see that whenever we're suffering, there's sense of self there. Whenever there's dukkha, whenever there's discomfort, not Physical pain, obviously, you can have no matter, what the mental states are. But to start to get the felt sense of when what we're saying, what we're thinking, what we're doing comes out of that sense of self. And when does it not? When does it just come out of the Dhamma, just come out of the Brahmaviharas? That's the big distinction. And that right there is where we can learn. This is like, when we see that it's coming from the sense of self, because the sense of self wants to get in there with everything. This is the nature of the mind. Why? Because when we get reborn into a lifetime, we have all of this to learn again about life and how to survive. The sense of self is very much about how to survive. We differentiate from other people and we have this ego. And we need to. That's how we have to start our development in life. And we need to have a healthy kind of ego, a healthy mind, healthy mental state before we can go further and really investigate letting that go. And it's a process to engage in. So this isn't just, it's just not like you can just come from a place of an unhealthy mental state. Let me try that again. The mind has to have enough stability in order to do this work. So we need to have a certain level of mental health. But then beyond that, we start to learn that we can really let go of that sense of self. Because what's there instead is the Dhamma, the principles of the truth, the way things are. That really informs our thoughts and our words and our actions. And like I said, the sense of self can creep in anywhere. Like sometimes someone wants to really go after conceit. But as they're doing it, the sense of self is there doing it. It's such a tricky thing, like I'm really going after conceit. I'm learning about all my conceits. But it's not. We have to gain the humility to just practice the Dhamma. Gain the humility to just share the Dhamma. And then see the operation of this ego behind the scenes when it's there. And of course, a lot of you are really good at this already. I mean, I'm not I'm encouraging that increased discernment and the increased ability to throw the sense of self completely out, to really throw it all to the wind, so that we can take in whatever the indications might be that there is something there that we should change. Whatever it is we discover in this process that we need to let go of, that we're ready and willing to let go of it. It's a radical letting go. Only preserving the Dhamma in us. And being willing to let go of everything else. you know, just open it up for questions and comments right there. Because then people, you come up with the ways in which people can misunderstand this, or the examples that we need to be able to apply it. So we can learn. It's all on you, come on. Neil?
Yeah, I just want to say, wow. Let everything go except the Dhamma. It just feels very far away.
But do you see examples where it's happening?
As you're speaking, it feels possible, but you know, then the ego jumps right back in and says, well, wait, I need this in my life, and I have to do that in my life, and I still have that to achieve. And yeah. And
So,
could I really let all that go? Do I even really want to let all that go? I don't know. It's not a question. It's just an impression that you've left with me.
well, I like what you're saying because you're drawing out a few places there where it gets stuck, right? Which is what we can expect. Because, you know, lifetimes of forming this sense of self and operating through it. And that question of, do I really want to let it go? Do I really want to? That's a very important question. And to start to own that, you know, like, okay, we see these, you know, people who have taken, we think it looks like all the path all the way to the end, and how free and happy they are. You know, like Ajahn Amaro talking about when he met Ajahn Chah and came to the monastery, and here's this monk living in the jungle and has nothing. He's the happiest person he's ever seen. And Ajahn Amaro said that he was young, or early 20s, I think, and his dedication was like sex, drugs, and rock and roll or something, you know, like, and he said, you know, he was really living, doing what he wanted, right? Just he had his own agency, but he's miserable. And he said, here's this monk living in a way. He said, I never want to live like that. You know, I wouldn't want that, but he's so happy. And so, of course, Ajahn Amaro becomes a monk, and now he's been a monk for 50 plus years, probably, or something. I don't know.
I don't think he's that old, actually.
He's not that old.
No.
Oh, well,
Anyway.
40 plus years, I don't know.
40 plus years, maybe.
But you know, it's like, when we start to ask ourselves, do I really want to let it go? You know, what is it that I don't want to let go of? You know, just not going after it with some kind of vengeance, because that's really, I think, the ego behind it again. Like, my ego really wants to be like Ajahn Chah. Well, that's not going to get me there. You know, it's like, what's going to get me there is stepping back and observing, you know, where is the tangle in my mind? Where am I entangled with the world? And then it's not about cutting off those ties. It's about reshaping those ties, reconditioning those ties to be filled with the Dhamma. And I can still be engaged in some of what I have been,
Okay.
always from a different place.
That's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like one way to think about it is when the Dhamma is there instead, then I'm not filled with a sense of kind of irritation, anger, urgency for, something to be different than it is in the world. But I'm filled with the Brahma Viharas, kindness, compassion, joy for the good things, and this evenness, this equanimity. And so when that's not the case, then there's some kind of ego thing in the background. And then our reflection, like this thing of scrutinizing and reflection is like, okay, so when do I see that happening? Or how can I bring that into this situation? Those Brahma Viharas and that basis of Dhamma. And then really just feeling how much freer and happier and how much more I can bring to other people from that place, regardless of the situation. You can still be doing musical theater or whatever. I can't, but you can.
Yeah, I guess, when I hear what you've been saying, it feels like it's got to be all or nothing. But what you're now saying, it makes it feel a little less daunting. Yeah.
Yeah. And also we're not going to go from all of our old ways to this whole different way of being in, like 2 days. It's like we just see one example of how it improves when I start to do this from a place of really solid morality, really solid loving kindness, really solid mindfulness. And then it's like, oh, there's a glimmer. And then we see that, okay, I really don't have that same negative reaction anymore in this context the way I would have in the past. All we need are a few little examples like that, really even just one. There was a period of time when I was doing photojournalism. And if I wanted to interview someone or, do some kind of story, and I didn't have any way to reach that person, I felt like, okay, I only need one clue. I only need one hint of a way to find this out. And this is the same with the Dhamma. You only need one little next step, and then from there, see where you can go next. And so it is important when we hear the Dhamma to not get discouraged by how far away it all feels, because it's not far away. It's really in that one little next step in the right direction.
So can I throw in one little trivial example that you've got me thinking about right now?
Please do.
So this is so mundane, but so tonight I have my monthly, once a month radio program to do, which I normally do with a partner, and he's not available because his mom passed away. And so I've been getting more and more anxious about doing this by myself. And as you were talking, and I was thinking, well, wait a minute. That anxiety is about my ego, that I want to be the best disc jockey that ever has been, or something like that. Instead, I'm thinking of it now, and hopefully I can hold on to this until tonight. I'm thinking about it as I have this job to do to entertain people who are listening. It's got nothing to do with me.
Yes.
So that's helpful for me right now as an example of letting it all go, but still being able to do this rather worldly thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I hope that seems relevant.
It's entirely relevant. It's right on. And if you can make that what you're going to do tonight a gift, it's a gift to those people. That is the Dhamma. It's beautiful, Neil. That's exactly right on.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia?
So thank you, Neil, for your comments, and especially that last example, because it kind of relates to what I'm reflecting on. But I've been noticing lately, and I think this is connected with what you were saying about Ayya, about when you're speaking, like noticing where that's coming from, and is it coming from self or is it just coming from the Dhamma? That I've been paying attention to when I'm in a Dhamma gathering like this, and as to what, actually paying attention to the energy behind my wanting to speak. And sometimes it does seem like, oh, I have something to share that might be helpful connected to the Dhamma. But a lot of times it has more to do with this kind of feeling like, I have to, or not I have to, but that like, I want to say something that's going to sound brilliant and that people are going to, react to. And it really is more about, it's definitely more self. And I can physically feel the difference. It's like, I get myself out there, and so people know. It's like in a sense of wanting to be known, but it's the self that's wanting to be known. And what I notice when I try to let go of that, because if I really were only speaking out of knowing it's that moment when it's just Dhamma being shared, I would be talking a lot less. And there's something scary about that. Like somehow I'm going to like fade into the woodwork and, not be there anymore. And so I don't know, is that just the self fighting for its life or something? And how
Yes.
do you work with that?
This is completely understandable because we are conditioned to want to survive.
Yeah.
And when you really get down to it, it comes down to an issue of survival, what we think we need to do to survive, to be noticed, to be cared for, to be something in this world.
Yeah.
And this is why it's so radical to throw that away, to realize that we're way safer. We are beyond threat if we really just throw the ego out and become the Dhamma. And this is a process. It doesn't happen like magic in the moment that we want it to. It's like, but it's true that we may have that fear, and yet the reality, check out the reality. When, first of all, I gotta say, when you can feel that distinction, it's so helpful. This is a big step already, to feel like when this is coming from the sense of self and when this is coming from the Dhamma, and you can feel it in your body. That is really what we want to be looking for if we don't know that already. And then to also, like, where does this lead? If I say this out of ego, where does it lead? And what's the overall felt sense about it, like you're saying? And then what if I just share the Dhamma? Where does that lead? And the truth is that you're going to be much more valuable to the people around you if you share the Dhamma. And that whole sense of self fades.
So say more, I guess something in me isn't quite convinced about, you said you're much safer if you're just coming from the Dhamma. And that's the part that I'm getting caught up in, like, how does that work? Because this sense of fear and and threat is about feeling like my safety and survival is connected with, connecting with people and being known and being seen and stuff. And if that's not there, where's
Yeah.
the safety? Where's the safety? That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, so this is the crux of delusion,
Mm,
that we think our safety relies on the sense of self and its promotion.
mm,
And I'll just say, by the way, if Dustin is listening to this, it's another aspect of what he asked for in wanting to, how do we uproot greed, hatred, and delusion? And this is the crux, this sense of self. And this is the defining difference of the Buddhist teachings, that not self. That really puts the Buddhist teachings different, distinctive from other teachings.
mm,
But you do see it, you see the kind of recognition of it in other traditions, sometimes with individuals. Anyhow, that's a different story. So how do you start to realize that you're safer just operating from the Dhamma? Because what does that mean? That means you're completely honest. Your sila, you're not going to want to go outside, moral virtue in any way. That's a protection.
mhm,
We're not going to have any lack of confidence in any assembly, because we're just coming from the Dhamma. There's nothing to prove.
mm,
When we come from the ego, that's when other people want to compete with us.
mm.
Then you're in conflict. And you don't have that when you just speak truth and you just speak Dhamma, and you're not imposing it on anybody else because you have no reason to. And if we're really developing those qualities of loving kindness and karuna, I don't like the translations in English of any of them. They all lean the wrong direction. Compassion, whatever, pity, whatever, but karuna and mudita. You express mudita to people about their goodness, but then watch out. Don't let the ego try to make something out of it or gain something from it. We want to really come from a place. And I know I'm telling you this, and this is like the end of the game, right? We have more or less of this as we go along, and that's okay. It's just like, that's why we're learners. We just keep learning from it.
Yeah, so maybe it was helpful to hear you say, we go in little steps. So maybe it's just a matter of trying it out. How does it feel, and where does it go, and where does sense of safety when I'm coming just from Dhamma, as opposed to when I'm got that selfing energy trying to protect.
Yeah. And as the Buddha said, we have to experience it directly ourselves in order to know it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And don't forget that being able to feel the difference is such a big step already.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Cynthia. But look how fast. Look at here you now. It's 10 a.m. You're already like in a totally different place. So this is a great learning. This is exactly how we learn. And to see the positive steps there, your ability to know that you're angry. But you know how easily it is for let's say someone who hasn't been exposed to any of this, who hasn't been meditating and all of that, to just be completely caught up in it and feel totally self-righteous about it. And just soak it up with more and more thoughts and more, you know, that's normal in this world. And that might go on for a while, but you're onto it. So you can now facilitate that change more quickly. It's like, okay, I gotta go to wherever it is I gotta go to for this to change. Just to witness that, just to feel that in your body, how fast that change happened. And it's like, you've been practicing for decades. You know, it's just like what Ajahn Anan is describing, whether it's decades or lifetimes, that's how that had changed so fast. It's because of that. Your body and mind know how to go into meditation. You were sitting like 2 to 4 hours at a go during retreat in June, you know, and that's the conditioning that you're developing and that you've been developing for a long time that makes it possible for that radical shift to occur. That's just like what Ajahn Anand's describing. All you need to do is observe it. And all you need to do is like, okay, how can I push the needle further in the direction of that dropping quickly and, you know, being mindful and present with it while it's boiling over, and then bringing in the elements, whether it is calling the nuns or whatever it takes, you know, like, or if it's putting on the recording of this session or whatever it takes, right? Mm-hmm. And then to really start to appreciate that you have some modicum of control over this, and that you keep moving it in that direction. We see a lot more change when we actually understand what's happening, and we can bring the causes and conditions in on purpose. I mean, you did it in a way because you had that determination you're going to come to this meeting, right? I mean, look at how perfect it all is, in a sense. I know I kind of hate talking like that, but it's like you get filled with all of this Dhamma and you go to sleep with all of that going on. You wake up and you have this kind of, you know, understandable, commonly experienced kind of episode. And then it immediately shifts. This is such a wonderful laboratory of experience. And it's like, this is what the Buddha is saying, you know, it takes practice, it takes reflection, it takes investigation to understand that a feeling is just a feeling. No matter how freaking strong it is, we can be present with it. We can bring in the elements that cause it to shift. And you did it. Patty?
Well, being the conditions that I live in and the place I am in my life is very different than many people who've already spoken, and it's very quiet. And so, and because I'm where I am, I don't have access to, well, I have good people around me, but they aren't practitioners. It makes a big difference. And so you asked initially, what did you learn? What have you learned? And I was reading through I keep a small journal. I don't journal every day, but I journal through retreats. I journal through when I talk to my teacher and stuff like that. And I read that periodically through this journal over the last 4 years, I was invited to practice joy because it is not very present in my life. And I used to say, oh, I don't really experience joy because I thought joy had to be as big as, remember the thing at the end of Sunday night, Disneyland, the Disney thing, Tinkerbell went over the thing and la, 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 right? I thought it had to be like that. Well, no. So, and not only to see it, but to name it.
Mhm.
And that has made such a big difference for me in this week, to see it, because it's, as it was explained to me, it's all around, it's everywhere, and see it and name it. So that, doing that a few times this week led me to, or it allowed me to open my heart to people that I'm not really close to, but I just jotted an email to a woman who, I mentioned her, she had sent out a big email to a group of people that Anyway, I said, gosh, that was really a great effort. I know you're really doing good work and trying to blah, 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 blah. And I said, there was unfortunately an error in the dates that you mentioned when Bhante Sujata was coming, yada, yada, yada. And I, blah, blah, blah. So she wrote me back this really heartfelt email that said, I opened it, it was kind and stuff like that. And she said, thank you so much for this email. It meant so much to me. And I wouldn't have expected that from this particular person. And then a couple of days ago, there was another occasion where, it was the ability to bring the joy that I named and experienced out into the world. And it was such a lovely thing, because it was loving and it was kind and it was beneficial. And it was all because of what I learned about joy. Another thing you mentioned about conceit. Conceit for me is like, I'm listening to somebody talk and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to say next, because what I have to say next is really important. And I just kind of got over that. Lampo Pasano, you've heard him say this many, many times, I'm sure. We get into that spin. What are the results of this? All I'm doing is spinning myself and jumping in somebody else, and it is conceit. Whether I'm saying I'm better than or worse than, the results are not beneficial. And so the pause and the recognition to just be able to say, what, as you say, where are you going? What's the background here? What's the intention? And so a lot of times I don't talk. And you know what? It's actually easier, because I'm not worried about what I'm saying or what I'm going to say, or if somebody thinks I'm better or less or whatever. It's not an issue anymore, because if I'm unhappy, then I need to look at my practice, what's going on here, because it's ego, it's me, it's mine, I, me, mine, I. I just wish I had people to talk to about this here. But anyway, that's how it is for me right now. So
I'm gonna start inviting people to move to Omaha. You know where you're going next? Come to Omaha.
yeah,
I'll come in.
it's not in the summertime.
Oops.
Yeah, that's it.
No, thank you. That's really true. That's also true. And to really listen is meditation. If we're really listening, we're really, our minds are really open. Even if what we're listening to we know is unwholesome, we know it's unwholesome, and we're seeing what's behind it in the person, the dukkha that's there.
Yeah.
And not being like, oh, I'm going to tell them how unwholesome this is. We got to know that we're invited to give that feedback. And, a lot of times that's not why they want to talk about it. They just want to, air it. And when there's a chance to share the Dhamma, then we do it. But you're right, there's no intensity behind it then. Yeah, beautiful. And I'm glad we got this online thing going. You can, get in touch. Are you on the WhatsApp group yet? You might want to look into that.
It's the time zone problem, you see, because
Oh,
you
but
guys,
WhatsApp is timeless. You can answer and then they can answer whenever they see it. And it's just, it's the timeless route. No, not quite.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Oh, speaking of the WhatsApp group. Yeah, maybe so we need another volunteer to help with that. So if anybody has any interest in helping with getting people on it, let us know.
You're talking really soft. Of course, my hearing's not that great. I don't know if they can hear you.
I don't
You can-
know. They seem to hear. Okay.
Okay,
I'm right
good.
here, right here. The
Good.
mic is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Linda, did you want to say something? I know we're gonna go a couple minutes over, but I think that's okay.
No, I was just gonna say, Ayya Santussikā, I didn't understand what you said.
Yeah, I was just saying, if anybody's interested in, we need another volunteer for the WhatsApp group, helping get people signed up into it. So, yeah,
If anybody's keen to help with that, let us know.
yeah. And this is, so you're going to keep doing Saturdays over Vasa, but this coming Wednesday is the last Sutta study for until October.
Could you hear that, Linda?
I'm sorry. About 75%.
Okay. Well, Saturdays will keep going, but Wednesday Sutta study won't for the over the Vasa.
So this next Wednesday is our last Wednesday evening and then after the Vasa, we're gonna shift to Friday evenings. Because then we want to come into town on Friday and do Friday evening and Saturday morning and then back up to the Hermitage. So we're gonna shift Wednesday night Sutta study to Friday night Sutta study, and we're gonna see, hopefully that works for nearly everybody. I know we can't get 100%, no matter what evening we pick.
We'll see how it
Hopefully
goes.
that works, and then we won't be in direct conflict with Clear Mountain programs anymore. I mean, Saturday morning is still gonna be Saturday morning, but, and then, like you said, I went through different kind of thoughts about what to do during the Vasa and decided to do this program online only, not in person, but online only in the normal way that we do it. So we'll try to do that. Hopefully the Wi-Fi will hold out there in the forest. It probably will be good enough.
Mhm. Ooh, but I heard that Clear Mountain is thinking of having Sutta study on Sunday nights.
Yeah,
so
they're starting a Sutta study on Sunday nights.
yeah, you will have that during Vasa while we're gone. If you really, really miss Sutta study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mira?
I just wanted to also encourage those of us who are close to try to come in person as long as everybody's well and not sick from COVID or been exposed to the the last day long in person next week for that special puja.
Asala Puja.
Gala puja. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
Go ahead.
our, like you said, our last program here in Sunnyvale for 3 months. And then we go into the retreat to Vasa the day after in the evening. So,
And just encourage, because I again to just like really hold the intention that we'll all be practicing during the Vasa together. And so whether we're online next Saturday or in person, to really, I think, as a time to really settle into this intention for that time period all together with the practices we'll be picking up and letting go of and together during that time. So I just want to encourage everybody to maybe try to come for the whole day, come in person if you can, to really be together in that way next week. That's it.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yes, we want to think about, okay, what's your Vasa practice going to be? It's, yeah, a delightful time to share that.
Yeah, maybe we could all really, I've been thinking about it a lot since we've started this process as a group, but if people really think about it over this week so that, you know, we're right there to support each other and how we'll be doing that. that would be great. I think the two questions are, what practice do we want to pick up and what do we want to let go of?
Yeah, and whether you want to have a practice buddy, renunciation buddy during that time,
Mhm.
kind of see if you want to sort that out with each other. And
The WhatsApp group is great for that because you
Yeah.
can message each other separately if you want to.
cool. All right, everyone.